Welcome to Dialogues with Masters, where we are fortunate enough to spend time with some of the most internally technologically advanced beings on the planet, who in addition to developing extraordinary skills, have also strived to develop a profound sense of wisdom and maturity. Because of this very important foundation being laid out, these brilliant beings use their abilities with utmost responsibility and reverence for the evolution of mankind. Today's guest is a wonderful example of this in action, so sit back, take it all in, feel free to ask any questions you may have in the comments section below, and enjoy. Our guest is one of the most interesting and loving beings I've ever had the pleasure of connecting with. As a young girl, she was blessed with a full-on illumination experience of unity consciousness. Due to this happening so early in life, she's been able to capture the mastery of some profound spiritual abilities over the course of many decades while striving to develop and maintain a level of wisdom that allows her to use her abilities for the collective benefit of all. She's currently using her spiritual skills to help people heal and evolve, often operating at the deepest and subtlest levels of reality. She has a website you can visit for more information about the lessons and healings that she offers, as well as ways to get in touch with her. The links are all included in the description below. A true master and dedicated servant to our collective well-being. Someone I am very excited to have on, Teresa Klan. Teresa, thank you so much for coming on. How are you?
Thank you, Stuax. Thank you for having me here. I just feel so blessed and so grateful to be able to share such, our best commodity is our time, our awareness. So I'm just really happy and thrilled to be here.
Thank you. The pleasure and honor is all mine. Thank you very much. I'm so excited to, get started and would love to have your take on what is consciousness to you.
Absolutely. Probably like most people, it evolved as I grew. First of all, there's the materialism, you know, science, period, right? That maybe before my brilliance experience. Then like dualism, science and spirituality, they don't mix. They're not together. So that's probably where most people are. For quite a long time, I was more into panpsychism, that everything has consciousness. And through that gives rise to all the other consciousness. Much like a white hole apparently exists in the middle of every cell, right? Every particle. And that's what links us all together. But as time evolved, and so I did too, I'm more of an idealist, that consciousness is all that is. And it's like when the electrons and protons come together in a bit of a soup, that creates ether, much like David Bohm's implicate order, that's hidden underneath like a matrix. And they're able to get images of it, and it looks much like the neural network in someone's brain, which I find
As above, so below, right?
oh, it's beautiful, right? And so consciousness is truly everything. It contains everything within it that was, that is, or pure potential that might come through here. It's non-local. It's the grand unifier where there's equanimity, not all things being equal, because for instance you might be a better whatever compared to me, but we're still equal beings, right? So there's no hierarchy. Every note in the song of the universe is required, and if we didn't have your note, it wouldn't be the same song as the universe. It would be diminished, and because it's scalar, we don't know how much, right?
That's beautiful. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so wonderful to see the truth coming through in so many different ways. As you mentioned with the musical notes, that was a beautiful way to put it. Teresa, I would love for you to take us back to your experience of unity consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone starts getting little angel bumps, that happens, right? And essentially, that's when we hear something that our soul remembers, and it allows our cells in our body to kind of upgrade to meet that. So, when you get those little tinglies happening, right? It's good, So if it happens, please allow it, right? So my brilliance experience, yes, I was in the woods, playing a hide and seek game with a group of people, and I can't say for sure how old I was, 4, 5, or 6 years of age, something like that. And up to then, an unremarkable life, no spiritual background or very religious parents or anything like that, no neighbors or anything, that it encouraged it. So I was running to go hide, right? And then suddenly I came to a complete stop and I couldn't move a muscle. I was in this place of extreme stillness. And at that young age, there was nothing to be afraid of. So I just sort of, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I kind of looked around, and what was around me before, like the trees and the rocks and the plants and the animals, fauna and flora, those were disappearing. They were fading away, fading out of my reality. And what I did notice was this beautiful light that came down. And it was, and remains so beautiful. The whitest, purest white light I have ever seen, with a lot of clarity, like clear vision in it there too. And there seemed to be consciousness, almost like little sparks of consciousness or lights, almost like fairy lights. And it was so beautiful and
So this was
so
also a visual experience
very
as
much
well.
very physical, very visual, and I was engulfed in this light. It came out of I did not know where, and I was bathing in it on the inside out of my entire body beingness. It was so beautiful. Describing it to a friend, he said it reminded him of a song lyric, like 1,000 crystal swans in a sky of suns. And that's exactly what it is. And that's maybe my gift to those that are feeling those little angel bumps, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's
Oh,
beautiful. And how did that change you? I mean, it was at such an early age that this happened.
right. Well, during the experience, there was another intuitive ability came on, which is clear cognizant or Gnosticism or clear knowing. And I got all these downloads, to use a popular
Yeah,
term, of
yeah,
perennial
yeah.
wisdom, right? Knowing that there's no difference between us, hence that equanimity statement that I made earlier. In fact, because we're all made of the same light and the same stardust, right? We all come from the same place, and therefore we are all connected. And
Absolutely.
anything that we do towards somebody else, any actions or thoughts, we're actually really kind of just doing to ourselves. So it was important, the kindness, the loving kindness, and the unconditional love that can, you know, um, grace our life with, right?
Yeah. And I tell you, it's so fascinating to hear about this happening at such an early age because what that essentially did was give you ample time to reflect on this experience and more time than most people usually have. So throughout that time, even after this experience, you maintain this level of understanding and built upon it. And take us through that. When did that start? When did the active responses to this experience start for you?
Oh, well, let me just sort of finish some of the things that came through, because this is really important. It will inform you and people who I am or why I am the way I am, right? like knowing if I could sensate something, like see it or taste it, that it actually didn't really exist. All it was a thin patina of true reality enmeshed within and through consensual reality. So it was actually an illusion, right? A beautiful illusion, of course. I'm not downplaying the gorgeous jewel-like planet we are and the gorgeous heavens that we also bathe in at nighttime. Um, and this was created because all, the conditions were right, right? And there's a lot more going on than I had any idea of, right? There's so much happening there, and that there was no time, especially in this meta view of cosmic conscious awarenesses. Time was also not the main driver, or a bit of an illusion on some dimensions there.
Can you get into that? What was your experience of time? Because it always fascinates me to hear about how at certain levels of reality, time is non-existent or doesn't apply to us the same way as it does on our 3D plane here. What was your experience of time like at that point?
During the experience, it just didn't exist. That's why I cannot ever tell anyone how long it lasted for, because I had no idea. No idea whatsoever. I was taken out of our consensual reality, and like the left brain ego building points
Right,
were dissolved, and it's more the right brain intuitive, etc., which
right.
has set me on the path to partially answer your question, to be a mystic. And a mystic's goal or raison d'etre would be to experience this unified state of consciousness, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
dissolving the ego that's there. And to also partly answer, because we're talking a little bit about time, I have bilocated, like been physically present in two places at the same time. And I have also done that, but in two times at the same time, right? So time is malleable. Time, like ocean of consciousness, is, well, is an ocean.
So that's beautifully put. And I would love to, I mean, you just brought up some two fascinating experiences. What if you can first go over your experience of being, I suppose, located or accessible in two different physical locations at the same time? What was your experience of that? How did that feel? I'm just curious. That's very interesting.
Yes. Absolutely. It still interests me. I'm still in awe of it, right? Still don't even really understand it myself. This kind of thing, these sort of, we take our lives to unpack them, or at least to apply them, right? Much like this brilliance experience, because that light I call brilliance with a capital B, because it was just so, so pure. In fact, it reminded me of that James Webb Telescope Deep Sky IMAX movie that's playing, at least in my area here, when the solar whatever unfolded, and there's this brilliant flashes. That's close to what I experienced there. But like
I'll have to
this,
take a
with
look at
that
that then.
bilocation two times and two locations at the same time, consciously, spontaneously, it was home. I was home. It just feels so natural. And then to come back here, I love my body and all the millions of I am consciousness maybe that make me up. But I, it's hard to put it in words truly, and we all try our best, but I knew of total freedom. In fact, so free, the word free is completely out of the conversation. Tapping into eternity and infinity, and just existing, being, having some form of individual consciousness, but yet so at peace and loving the collective human consciousness that we are all in. And like that first brilliance, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, if I wanted anything, during those minutes, oh, I don't know how long I was there for. I think the game ended by the time this experience ended. So, um,
Must have found you, or maybe not.
no,
Maybe you
no,
found a really good spot. You
no,
no. Oh
no.
wow. You also managed to pick a good spot.
um, it was like if I wanted anything like an ice cream or a toy, I knew instantly it would have manifested for me. And that was the same when I bilocated and time traveled. Pardon me, Edgar Mitchell told me I had a non-local event. So we'll try to keep that going there. And I I but I didn't need a ice cream because I already was everything. I already was the ice cream. So you see, can you tap into that level of freedom and the dynamism that comes from that? And truly the pure joy and the bliss, knowing the universe wants nothing better than like the utmost freest expression of my template, my part in my note in the universe. It wants to support me. So I know that even things down on the earth can't is not always easy, that I am always going to be fine. I am always,
Wow.
as we all are. We're just going to be fine, regardless of what happens. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Absolutely. And the purpose that we're all here for, hopefully, is one also that it can realize as soon as possible, um, to hopefully eliminate all suffering and pain.
Yeah.
So just hope that works in that way for everybody. You mentioned manifesting, and this is a topic that has been trending for some time. It's incredibly popular right now. Um, and it involves essentially envisioning what it is one would like to manifest or create in their life, and then essentially honing in their focus and their energies toward this desire. However, what I've noticed is in a lot of these manifestation guided, techniques, a lot of times I'll see a very important aspect of manifestation missing, which is being in our heart spaces before manifesting anything, uh, internal or external, because we're also manifesting our internal environment, and we're doing this pretty much all the time. So I would love to hear your thoughts on manifesting correctly, so to speak, versus incorrectly, and what are the differences in the results of each of those?
Right, absolutely. You're completely right. I completely agree on the importance of the heart in these sorts of experience that we create as creator beings. We are sacred creator beings here on the planet. We have the power to make choice, and that is never to be taken lightly. So when we begin with our heart, ideally we're able to use whatever techniques or whatever to um, tap into our truth. Like, what does Teresa really want? What does she think she wants, or her neighbor has? So dot dot dot. What is truly fulfilling for me? And sometimes, in order to really tap into the clarity and the intuitive wisdom of the heart, we have to do a lot of healing, a lot of trauma work, a lot of clearing in our energy field. A whole bunch of steps can be in place, but I'm just going to kind of zip past that, okay? Because each would require their own, of course, right? But starting being in our heart, and the more we do this, the more we trust ourselves, because we're going to send a really straight, clear signal line up to the universe. So the universe can dial in and go, oh, let's focus our attention here, because that's the nature of consciousness. Is it groups around other larger states of consciousness, right? And so if you send up a great light, and it often works way better when you add an emotion or a feeling. So essentially, what you would do is just be in your heart and get as close as you can to Source, God, Creator, whatever ascended master, loving being, angel, spirit guide, you can try to dial into there first so you can be in alignment with your truth, right? So you can really activate that sovereign ability to be a sacred creator being. And once you're there, let's say if you already have something in mind, right? You would, a mystic's term is called throwing a line. So you would throw, like from the person is, they would, in their imagination, so to speak, maybe the fourth dimension, they would throw a line to what it is they're wanting, right? And it's what, and they're tapping into the feeling of it, the experience of it as if it's already happened in their life and is happening in their life, being present with that and feeling good about it because we only want to manifest things that are good, right? And so, really focusing our awareness there. And it's that focused awareness that sends waves, wavelengths, movement in the ether. And that's what particles of consciousness and particles of, well, particles and photons start kind of, I don't know, aligning or clumping there, right? And then once you get that and you're really focused and you stay with it, and then you let it go, you drop it, and then it takes on a life of its own, right? And then you just trust the universe will provide for you. And I think that's probably a good quick Coles Notes form of that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, beautifully put. And I'm so happy that you went over just how important it is to get your internal state conducive for the right sort of manifestation. So healing past traumas and really making sure that your desires are coming from a place of awareness, from understanding the situation in its entirety if possible. And then from there, making the best possible decision as far as what to manifest. If there is a need to manifest, there's
Mhm.
not always a need to manifest something in the in our 3D space. Internally, of course, we would always like to manifest a certain state which is conducive for our growth and to stay happy. But very beautifully put, Teresa. I appreciate that your kind of overview on manifesting. I'm curious, what are some of the like kind of drawbacks that you've seen from manifesting strictly from the headspace, which has seems quite common, popular, and really promoted on social media in a way that may be really be termed as slightly irresponsible from a spiritual perspective. What are some stories that you personally can share with us of manifesting going wrong?
Right, absolutely. If we're not aligned with, say, the Buddhist path of what's it called, the right action, right? Where we get more and more aligned with, the Buddha field, right? And so eventually we don't focus or think about ourselves, right? We're more of the collective and the expanded consciousness, which is exactly what you're wanting to offer to your audience, right? So
Absolutely.
if we're not, because when we are there, then everything is easy. Then it's all flow because everything is set up for our success. But if we decide to put the cart before the horse or, shiver me timbers, like tell God what to do, things can get wobbly. For instance, many years ago, I opened up a metaphysical store. One of those brick and mortars. It was in the early 1990s in a small town, and it was my first business. And I made a mission statement, and I had ideas what I wanted to carry, just all that fun new business stuff. And one of my ideas, not quite in the mission statement, but close to it, was I want to create a place that's safe for people so they can come in and whatever they interact with or buy or whatever it happens to be, conversations, with me or other people in the space, other healers, that they would leave feeling lighter. So that sounds great, right? Doesn't that sound great?
Beautiful. Absolutely. Who wouldn't want to actually, yeah, take advantage of being in a place like that? Absolutely.
However, dot, 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 let's just say it culminated in one time when I was, it's a small store, so it was always just me there. For the most part, there was three people in the store crying their eyes out at the same time. Because in this environment, in that community, it wasn't really safe to, do that or share that. But because I created that bubble where they were heard, seen, and supportive without even talking to them and getting them to this, breakthrough, epiphany, release, whatever, they just sort of spontaneously did it on their own. So there I am with a box of Kleenex triangulating. It's, oh, okay, just, yeah, well, yeah, here's some tea and go to the next person. So you see how it can take on a life of its own because we never ask a question unless we're prepared for the answer. And we never ask for something we're not really prepared to accept.
Absolutely. Great point. Um, and I mean, if you really just do an honest reflection, you think about it. I mean, how often are most people really in a state where they're not anxious, they're not nervous, they're not living in fear, they're not doing something at pure tactical advantage. These things are sometimes on autopilot, and we don't really realize that. And so once you send a message out to the universe, you're not just sending out what you want physically, you're sending all of it out. And therefore you might get what you want physically, but from what I understand and what it seems like you're implying as well is there might be something coming from behind you which you may not see coming. And unfortunately, the situation may end up one in which you might get something, but at the same time, there may be a certain effect on your life, which may not be, very pleasant, to
Yeah,
say the least.
you know, I mean, I got what I asked for in abundant forms, right? But you can exactly what you're saying. There could be like this wish fulfillment, or what leads itself up to spiritual psychosis, when we want to connect
Yes.
with our guys so much and we're all front loading ourselves with, oh, the star beings, they're there, or my dearly departed grandmother, I miss her so much. So we can try to set out, oh, I'm going to connect with them, I want to connect with them, and then something's going to show up, right? If we have perceptive abilities, right, and take notice and trust ourselves that we're getting something. But if we don't kind of vet these energies that are coming in, use discernment and discretion. All that glitters is not gold, of course, right? And so I heard a story. One lady thought she was connecting with something and it was all gold and sparkly and all good, but she didn't have a teacher, someone to help her through this time, to mentor her safely through it. So what ended up happening is it wasn't a being of love, light, service, and power, right? And it kind of messed with her life to the point where apparently she drove her entire family into bankruptcy because she was a blind follower of what it was she was believing she was receiving. And, the only beings really that have a human agenda are humans, right? It doesn't mean other beings are not benevolent to want to help and support us, of course, right? So that's an example of manifesting inappropriately. I think that's what you said. Yeah.
And then why do you feel that happened? Because there are different things that I hear about manifesting, and one of the things that I hear about is um, manifesting essentially occurs when your focus is fixated on something. So essentially, saying you don't want something is the same as saying you want it because your focus is really on that thing. And I'm just curious, um, do you think this was a case of, I guess, negative manifestation or inverse manifestation, whatever you want to call it? Or were these really certain forces that this individual connected to that had a particular influence on her life.
I think it was a combination of both, like many things are. She had such a wish fulfillment desire, probably based out of some sort of sense of unworthiness. And I'm just, kind of, you know,
Yeah.
theorizing here,
Yeah.
right? Because if she felt a lack, if there was a hole, if she wasn't feeling worthy of achieving whatever it is or receiving what she was receiving due to past, due to beliefs, who knows what, right? Then, yeah, she's going to set herself up for failure without even knowing it because
Uh,
energy goes where attention flows. And I know that sounds
yes.
pithy, but it's
Yes.
true, right? And
100%.
so there's like that iceberg theory, like maybe 15% were cautious and 85% were not, for instance, right? Guess what drives us? It's the 85%. So that's again why we got to tuck in, pull out those traumas, pull out those old beliefs, outdated beliefs that probably never belonged to us in the first place, right? And so we do come from a place of clarity, right? And yeah, there are other forces out there. Human beings are not the only humans, or yeah, we're not the only humans on the planet, or sorry, there's lots of humans in our galaxy, including humans on Terra, but there's other beings too in other dimensions,
Absolutely.
and they can be very opportunistic, like people playing with Ouija boards, or you probably hear of people when they start to astral travel because
Yes.
that doesn't always go well either, right? So
Yes.
there's a whole
Yes.
bunch to do before you start kind of going into this thing because it's basically all about synchrony, syncing up with the divine, syncing up there. So within that light is protection. A lot of people want to do, oh, I got to protect myself, so I'll surround myself with light and put shields up and all that. That's fine, that's great. But at a point, you find your real protection is your own light.
Yes. So important that I think you touched on that point where we understand how to, number one, discern between what is happening internally and what is coming from the outside. What are some methods that you either teach or recommend to help with this discernment of various intuitive information that we're sensing?
Right, right. A lot of it can be basic, psychic intuitive development skills, but that could take a long time for people and it can be frustrating because it might find a whole bunch of ways that don't work until you find the way that it works for you. So if you have the time and the patience, by all means. I mean, I have, and it worked really well for me, right? But there are a couple really simple techniques that I may offer, okay? And these are things that you could do yourself. It's quick, it's easy to learn, and it's free, right? On the go intuition. So I'm going to go on the premise that most of your listeners are in the same body of people that are inherently clairsentient or empathic, where they sort of feel something in their body. Okay. So we're going to use a body centered way to do this. Okay. There's two that come to mind. One's the simple sway test, where someone would stand or sit, centered, grounded. If you need help to get centered or grounded, there's a thymus gland under the sternum here. Just do a few little taps, and that's a way to immediately like center and ground. So that's prep work, right? If you're all in a chaotic or in your head too much, you might want to do one of the Donna Eden energy medicine techniques of doing figure eights around the eyes. And you just sort of keep doing that until you feel a sense to yawn. And of course, feel free to yawn. But what happens then is it gets you out of that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system dominance that creates distortion, right? So you can't send out a clear signal line, let alone understand and translate it when it comes back to you, right? But it gets you in the parasympathetic, the gentle one that feeds your strength and kind of gives oomph to everything. It helps so you can spread your wings and fly with, wing to wing tip with creator, right? So those
Absolutely.
are a couple of techniques. Another one is just simple breathing. Breathe in for 4, out for 6. Or box breathing, in for 4, pause for 4, out for 4, pause for 4. You can extend that as much. Maybe you do 5 or 6 breaths. So whatever you can do to get yourself centered. And then a sway test. You're standing and say something out loud or to yourself that you know is false, um, and see how your body responds. You will notice like a little micro sway or tilt one way or another. And people might
Hmm.
want to try it now. It's really simple. Like I could say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm wearing pants," or "I am a man," or, "I had hamburgers for breakfast," whatever. Just say something that's false and see how your body responds. And without giving it away, most people, if it's a negative, they'll feel like they're tilt back a little bit.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
And then you have to say something that you know is true. Like, I am having a conversation with Stu X right now, and then see how your body responds. Most people, it would be a tilt forward. So essentially, you're using your most precious magical implement in your most sacred temple, which is your physical body, right? As the dowsing instrument. Pendulums are great, but honestly, you don't always need one, right? So that will give you a yes or no answer. And so many things we can put in yes or no's, right? Another physical one is do the centering, either the thymus thump, the figure eights, the different breathing techniques, and then interlock two fingers, like, the okay sign. Some people do those two, some people do those two. And again, say something that you know is false and try to pull your fingers apart. You don't do it like a massive pull, but you just give enough, right? And then if it's false, if it's not in alignment, in resonance with your truth, it'll pull apart. If it is, like I'm enjoying a beautiful cup of raspberry tea, and then it'll get strong because the universe reinforces truth. So your body's energetics and musculature and nervous system respond, so it's more resilient, more resistance to being pulled apart, right? Maybe one more for those that are visual. Okay. If you're wondering if something is for your best and highest good and the best and highest good of all our relations, close your eyes. Imagine the stoplight, that hangs in the intersection with the red, the amber, and the green light. Okay. And then again, you're all centered and grounded, and just, okay, I am going to go out with my friends tonight and we're going to go dancing, right? Is this in my best and highest good to do it? And just allow, you never force. If you have to, lean back, like physically lean back or put your attention in the back of your spine, right behind your spine. And then a light will come on. Red is no. Amber is rephrase it or come back later, not enough information. Because sometimes other things have to happen first before that truth can come. Or if it's green, then literally you got the green light to go, right? Another one is you can, if you're not too sure if you can trust someone or something, right? Imagine you're walking up to a sink, and you can make it your own sink you actually have, or just a beautiful, fantasy sink, right? And there's a couple of taps, hot water, cold water, with like a spigot, or maybe you call those taps, I don't know. But the part where the water comes out of, okay? And what you're going to
Yes.
do is you're going to
Awesome.
intend to turn on both of those taps and allow whatever that comes out to be reflective of the relationship you have with someone, and turn it on and see what comes out, right? There was, for me, for instance, one, it was half water, all nice and sparkle and lovely, the other half air, nothing, dead air. because what it was an unbalanced relationship, and I was giving a lot more to it, and the person wasn't coming back, right? Another time, what came through was like clumpy silt. So the person was hot and cold. They would be present, but then they would kind of disappear. So it would be clumpy, right? So that you just want to, have fun playing around with your intuition and your
Yeah.
imagination to discern what that is, right?
Absolutely. No, beautiful, insight into different methods that can help us achieve this clarity in which we understand what is happening inside of us. Very interesting and unique methods, all of them. And I think everybody probably experiences different sorts of visualizations pretty much depending on what they give significance to. And it's so interesting to know that, what your visualizations of, this particular method were. Very cool. There's a lot of talk of astral travel, out of body experiences, lucid dreaming. And I wanted to ask you, what is the difference between these three, if there is a difference, and what are some possibilities?
Right. Well, you can look at it that we are multidimensional beings and say, you're in your home now. You are who you are, regardless if you look through like the window through your kitchen or out on your patio or balcony. So it's your same light originating from the same place, but you're just faceting or interacting with something else, right? So out of body experiences can very much be a catch-all phrase for out of it, but remote viewing is very specific, right? Bilocating, is very, very specific. So there's ways that maybe that could be, walked back or reverse engineered in the technique how it goes, right? Lucid dreaming again, it's all of you, right? And lucid dreaming is beautiful, and there's a few techniques to help people get there. Um, and even to
And I believe there's some methods to improve yourself internally with lucid dreaming as well. I believe there's dream yoga also,
yes,
correct?
yeah, dream yoga, absolutely. And essentially, the lucid dreaming or astral travel, that's all partakes again, like in all of us, as if we were a house with all these windows, and it's largely accessed through the fourth dimension or the astral plane. And once again, hey, you know what? Our traumas are going to show up here. If we have unresolved stuff or contracts or connections or whatever with these lower kind of gunky astral levels, that's where we're going to go. And that's why we have repeating nightmares or night terrors or night sweats or whatever that happens along those lines, right? Where if we heal a lot more, then we're more clear, strong, and therefore loving. So we will connect with that in the astral as well. One of my teachers reinforced when I was talking with them, and I said, I've done a lot of healing work and cleared a lot of karma, but that's a different topic altogether. Let's say I cleared the memories of what was created, right? That we would maybe call it karma. Okay. And my dreams that were uncomfortable slowly got better and better and better. Once in a while, I would even have a nightmare, but I don't anymore, right? Because I'm not going to that aspect of you know, the hard school of knocks in astral
Yeah,
school, right?
yeah. No, and it's such a significant aspect that you touched on right there is again back to making that internal space conducive for happiness and growth and discernment, especially if one is to try and access the astral realm is so important. From my understanding, there are entities at that level also. uh, would it would it be safe to assume that there are entities that you also attract in your direction in this level of existence?
Yes, absolutely. For instance, in the astral, we're kind of like punching holes through to go to other realms, right? Well, if we don't close those, they can follow us back. It's like some people have experience, going to a graveyard or something and they feel something, they took something home with them inadvertently, right? So even if
Yeah.
we don't have practices in place, or if we don't know of what to do, or even if it's happening, you could pretty easily create your own, like a little prayer at nighttime about, please let me be held in the most sacred, beautiful container as possible while I go and do whatever I do, when I sleep. And when I come back, please ensure I come back into my body safely, smoothly, easily, feeling refreshed, inspired, and may all portals be closed. Because there's a lot of, again, a lot of opportunistic energies.
Yes. Touching on that, there is a YouTube series that I follow here and there in which folks go on certain investigations in what people would call haunted locations.
Oh, mhm.
And one thing that I have noticed is, the
Continues to
longer the more problems this person see in their life. And the types of places that this individual goes to are places in which there were a lot of negative experiences that occurred um, while people were both alive and passing away. And for example, he would out of nowhere get into a couple of car accidents, of pretty serious nature. His dog would get sick, and uh, people close to this individual would start getting sick unexpectedly. He himself at this moment is sick, and one of the things that you said that stuck out, which is kind of connected to what I've seen on the series, is there would be a lot of times when, for example, a Ouija board or something like that would be used, and instead of closing the portal, so to speak, as you just mentioned, a lot of times they would be forced because of what's going on around them to just take their hands off of the Ouija board, forgetting the name of what is used to kind of identify certain letters on the Ouija board.
Oh, the
But
planchette.
the planchette, which apparently, pretty much, um, pretty much encourages that entity to stay there. And it almost seems to me like this individual has attracted so many of these entities that at this point they're experiencing all of these challenges in their life, which they never experienced before taking up these sorts of investigations. So, what are your thoughts on it? I'm curious. Are we talking about the same thing here?
Yeah, we are, and I've known that too. I've known that, I've seen it in people who were like, they practice magic, like ceremonial magic or other things, in that direction, which is commanding. Doing a circle, angel, go there now. Now you're trapped. Now you have to serve me. Like what's
Oh,
loving and benevolent about that, right?
yeah.
So
Wow,
there's
wow.
there's
Great way to put it.
there's a cost to be paid, right? When you swim in negativity, it's going to seep in and kind of get you, and then it makes it easy. Like one of the things I do is aura cleansing. I have to check mine own. The other day there was something in the back there. I wouldn't have known it unless I looked to see it, right? So there's this maintenance that's required, especially if you do this kind of stuff, right? So unfortunately, it sounds like that gentleman or woman didn't have anything in place, for that. I know they're always recommending do this and that, but are they doing it themselves, right? And the people that were
Yeah.
magicians, often you see them, our age, younger, well, your age, younger, and they're walking in canes, they're in wheelchairs, they're incredibly sick because
Wow.
they've been co-creating, what with angels and, their own higher self, right? Or light beings. They're co-creating with these other entities that will sure fulfill their wants and needs, but there's a cost, there's a payback feature. And that's kind of what some people say the sevenfold law or rule, right? And that connection is maintained by, guess what? Your life energy, because they cannot create it themselves. Dark energy cannot create anything. So they would like latch on suck the energy, and then just to maintain it. But you know what's really yummy and delicious for them is something called loosh, Loosh, and that's negative responses to things in the environment, right? So they're going to set you up for failure so you could feel angry, frustrated, maybe a trauma, because that's yummy. That matches their resonance. So that's why it seems that some of these people, after a while, it's just one disaster after another, right? Because they've turned into feeding troughs for these
Oh,
beings. And they're not, these beings aren't doing anything wrong. That's who they are. It's like a family
yeah.
member. Oh, well, that's just who they are, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
they
it's like
want to
shooting yourself
live
in the foot.
like viruses, like bacteria, pathogens. They want to
Yeah.
live too,
Yeah.
and they deserve to live, but they don't. They can't live in our space. Nothing can. It should only be
Right.
us in our space, because then there's massive
Yeah.
miscreations, and so you gotta talk to them and encourage them to leave, almost like a counseling session.
Wow. Wow. So these entities become attached to us at sometimes, and it becomes very challenging to remove this attachment. And one thing I've noticed, it, like you said, it's almost like they're parasitic in nature. So it isn't really them doing anything wrong. It's us that we have to really understand what sort of influences we're dealing with. And it goes back to manifesting correctly and really having that correct intent being in your heart center. Otherwise, you go towards the route of competency over wisdom and maturity, which
Oh,
these days I feel is a
mhm.
ridiculous trend where we're constantly trying to empower ourselves without setting a direction first. And then we end up in some polar, ridiculous circumstances, which are very hard to get ourselves out of.
Yeah, that's right.
Curious, what are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Just like science knows we're going, technology at a rapid pace, but our level of consciousness isn't keeping pace with that. And like, some of the original remote viewer trainees, it's like, here's a bunch of stuff that you can experience whatever and learn this and do that. And oh my God, feeding their ego by and large. And then because they weren't getting spiritual guidance, it sounds like I wasn't there, but I rubbed shoulders with some of them, a few times, and they didn't get it. And the stories these people with kind of boots on the ground literally were telling me, it's like, no, they didn't survive. They crashed and burned because they couldn't, there was cognitive dissonance there. And that never sets us up for success. And these entities, these beings, these interlopers, hitchhikers, whatever you want to call them, right? They go in because there's something within us that needs to be healed. Okay, there's an Achilles heel that maybe, say, if someone has shame about an addiction of some kind, well, like they say, there's an angel for that, there's an entity for that, right? And it'll go, oh, addiction, oh, there's one, and it'll go there. And it'll do everything it can to keep you, indulging in whatever your addiction of choice is.
I've also heard stories where there are multiple entities existing in one physical space. I suppose that we would call our bodies. Have you encountered any of these situations, and what was your experience like?
I have, and not too long ago, I knew someone who had a pretty nasty attachment, but it wasn't always there. It would come and go, jump in, jump out, and this person didn't even know it. But it found me and it was like, oh, and it jumped on me. And it was really intense. It was like immediately I couldn't connect with my guides. I was completely drained with energy. I actually had to hire someone myself to help me, right? Do a clearing, let's say. And I could feel it come in, and I just won't go into details, no point of doing that. But she cleared that, and then she also found something else that was there because it's hidden. It's uses like black magic to hide itself, right? And it was hidden, and
Yeah.
it poked all these holes in me and was sucking my energy dry. It's almost like dog piling on.
Yeah.
That can absolutely happen. And it took me quite a while, weeks, to heal from that, right?
Wow. Wow. Uh I'm so happy that you touched on your experience. I appreciate it. I really thank you for sharing that experience because it's probably not easy to recall or to put yourself back in that sort of memory. But I think it's very important for viewers and listeners to understand just what the implications of dealing with such forces are. And um, before your curiosity gets the best of you, please educate yourself
Mm.
as thoroughly as possible, not just on the techniques on how to do this. Those are plenty, and there are many sources that you can find, but also how to create your internal space and your immediate external space in a way in which you know these these entities can have as little influence as possible if you choose to go that route.
Mhm.
Um, this isn't something that is necessary by any means. So, it's also very important that we understand what is needed versus what we're doing recreationally. And
Yeah.
remember, that recreation can turn into chaos very quickly, as you mentioned, Teresa. And these are forces that are beyond us. We may not even know. I mean, even some of the most skilled, intuitive folks, as yourself, you know, require assistance to deal with some of these forces just because of how intense they can be.
Absolutely. And it bears mentioning that this doesn't need to happen to everyone. It doesn't need to be woven into anyone's tapestry of their life, right? This just is me and what I've experienced. And maybe I needed to for some reason so I can share a little bit what the dark is and kind of pull back the veil
Yeah,
and this could happen. But essentially, in any good mystical training, say working with guides, at some point, instead of asking them for help and insight, you merge with them and you become them. So the word guides or guidance stops being part of the vocabulary. And there's some that say it's the same for these more darker energies, right? There was something
yeah,
within me, there was, say, an unworthiness piece that
yeah,
I was probably like 90% healed, but that's not enough, right? And so I
yeah,
could share now because it's good. I'm when I was going through it, yeah, it was tough and it affected me in many ways. But now that I'm on the other side, Stu, life is just so sweet. It's beautiful.
that's
It's
wonderful.
being coming into more wholeness, like Louise Hay had a tape decades ago. And it was now that I have cancer, I am whole, right? Because it gave her that beautiful portal way into
Yeah,
healing. And let's
yeah,
find these flags before they turn into red flags, orange flags or
yes.
yellow flags.
Yes, yes, you're so right. Another great point that you've touched is uh, trying to trying to see clearly enough, or working on your clarity to a point where you can avoid some of these obstacles by learning what those obstacles will try and teach you beforehand. Are there, is it, what's the most, I would say, fundamental aspect of getting yourself to a point where you could navigate the currents of life in a way where you could potentially foresee what the universe is trying to teach you or may try and teach you, and then
Yeah,
from there navigate
yeah, you
your way
could
around that.
do a bit of a timeline in your life to
Uh-huh.
find common elements as far as what the distillation of the teaching might be as like someone in
Mhm.
kindergarten to relate to. It doesn't have to be all flowery and wordy and long theses. It could just be very simple. Trust yourself, be kind to yourself, right? It could be very simple and just sort of, contemplate. This can take time, right? Just contemplate.
Uh,
What are some recurring themes in my life that are playing over again, looping behaviors, looping patterns? And that's a
yeah.
doorway to freedom for yourself. Going to those places that maybe kind of put you off or scare you, but they lead you to
Yeah.
such sweetness. Like, who was it? Someone, Leonard Cohen, or no, not him. Someone said the crack in the bell is where the light gets in, you know, something along
Great
that.
way of
So
putting it.
show up for
Yeah.
yourself. Take responsibility for yourself and how you're showing up in the world. You are so worth it. And we need you, each and every one, individual note, right? If we took one key off a piano keyboard, it wouldn't work, right? So that's essential. Just you can be your own guide through this, and then from there decide, you know, what steps to take. At the same time, I mean, there's different paths of yoga. For me, prayer, meditation, devotion work good for me. In fact, that brilliance experience probably came up at such a young age because of other lifetimes I've lived. I've had considerable time spent in such practices that it's just naturally, oh, here you go, right back where you kind of left off last time.
Yeah. Have you looked into past lives? And maybe this is a discussion for another dialogue, but I'm curious, is that something that you've looked into?
Yeah, it does. I have. And the more clarity you get, the more your recall comes online. Okay. So say if it's something that um is like a soul memory, like a past life, all of a sudden you recall something, that's more you feel it more in your aura. Okay. It's almost more of the observer, the witnessing yourself. Like that's one aspect of consciousness is awareness and of being aware. And what part of you are you perceiving with? One real quick, simple way
Right.
to help people get into observer mode is say we're talking here and we're kind of front facing, right? Instead, again, shift your perspective toward the back half of your body. And if anything, on the very back of your head, kind of where it goes out here, or the back third eye
Yeah.
chakra, and have that your point of perception for what you're doing. Okay. So the more you clear, the more you unpack all those garbage bags and trash and whatever you got going on ancestrally, genetically, personally, soul memory, all those layers got to be dealt with. The more those memories will come online. Now, I really adore doing Akashic Record sessions for myself or others. And that's a perfect place to go and do that. And it's safe, right? Anyone can learn how to do it. It's not a psychic skill. All it is an alteration of your level of consciousness. But of course, if you are a trained intuitive of some kind, you are a little ahead of the game because you know you could trust yourself. You know you hear angels or you get messages and those things happen, or you have precognitive dreams and they come true. So that helps. It kind of sets you up, front loads you for success, right? But
Yeah.
anyone could do the readings, and that's you tapping in to a larger aspect of yourself where you're
Yeah.
showing up for yourself. I remember doing a class once. It was online. A few dozen people I was invited to speak at a tarot conference actually. And so there's
Another service that you offer, by the way.
oh well, yeah, but I've evolved past that.
Yeah.
My first deck actually I
I
got
see.
49 years ago. But after a while, you learn a few things, and I wouldn't say they get in the way, but now when I do readings, it's just straight on intuitive, right? But I adore cards.
Wow.
I sell them.
Yeah.
I like cards.
It's a fun game at this point, but
Yeah,
you can get even more detailed now. Wow.
yeah, of course, of course. Sorry, I was saying something there about. Oh, right. So I was doing a presentation, and open up. Everyone was in their own records, totally private for each person. Closed it down. Time for sharing. And a woman says, "Well, I don't think I got very much." I said, "Okay. Well, can you tell me what did happen?" She goes, "Oh, well, I just saw all this light and felt all this love." And she didn't know that that was herself,
Yeah.
right? She didn't know that she was soul bathing, and now she has a glimpse into her infinite true being of who she is and spiritual
Yeah.
truth. And that's who
Yeah.
she is, not our roles, responsibilities, and the stories we tell us, which
Yes.
we tend to use for manifestation, or the other way,
Yes.
my way, is more intention setting, right? And then she
Right.
also gets to
Right.
know what she's sharing with people, maybe below the radar, but how precious and unique she is. That's the epitome of empowerment.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting to hear that someone with such a beautiful experience completely thought that it must be just a bunch of mumbo jumbo that is playing on in their head, like a lot of I would say folks these days, especially in our part of the world where we have a very left brain oriented society, where the only actual reality is what's physical and what we can see and touch, but our experiences are just some concoction of strange psychological and emotional information. And even if it is, I would encourage those individuals to still take that as information and variables that should be processed, regardless of what it may seem to them, because it's all information. And the more information we have, um, the more informed decisions we can make. And so I think it's very interesting that such a beautiful experience was ignored, and probably I don't know the individual, but due to this mode of thinking, as you stated, where we tend to create our identification around some things that we really aren't. So, very interesting that you touched on that. And I really hope that this sort of information, this internal information that is constantly stirring up inside of us, becomes a living reality for as many of us as possible, because of how significant it is to hone all of those energies in the most conducive way possible for not just yourself, but everything around you. Just to, one small example, what's going on in the earth, the conditions of the forest and whatnot. We tend to forget that half of our lungs are outside, you know,
Well,
they're not in here. They, we need we need these trees, we need these plants to create the oxygen that we breathe. So, I think it's incredibly important to be in tune with our energy in a way to work towards the benefit of not just all humans, but life
yes.
in general.
Absolutely. And we hadn't even talked, touched on, nature and the effect of that.
Right.
As a heart math mentor, we were, taught, certain things to, get people in heart coherence. However, if you don't have a mentor close by or any of the tech or the gizmos or whatever, go out into nature. What is it? Geez, if you lay down for half an hour on the ground, you can have a blanket, but best if you don't, and clothes, right? Um, Within half an hour, you get into heart coherence naturally, right? And me, I, for one, I found trees very chatty, right? You can connect with them. You know, when you have a friend and you hug them and you just feel this heart to heart connection of love, right? You can do that with nature as well. But always ask permission. You don't just rush in and hug someone, right? Especially if you don't
Good
never been
point.
introduced to them. I had a client last week and she was having some personal issues, and a lot of it was involving the house she was living in, just, antiques, hold energy, for instance. Anyways, I tuned in during one of our metaphysical coaching sessions and I said, "Oh, well, the tree. Do you work with the tree?" And goes, "Well, no." So I taught her how to interact with the tree, and that one in particular. And I was psychically watching her, and set all my multidimensional intuition things were on, and I was watching, and she was doing it good. So when I left, the tree was non-existent. It was old, sick, hollow inside and out, and not in a good way. Um, and so she started doing that. And then a week later, it's this huge, puffy green tree. She actually sent me photographs. How quickly it responded to her, right? And
That's
they're
beautiful.
magical. I never when I realized, oh yeah, the trees sunbathe. but they also bathe under the stars. They star bathe. They're like antenna. Oh, see, I'm getting angel bumps there. And
Yeah,
they just, oh, yes, adore nature, honor nature. Everything has consciousness, rocks, clouds, trees, everything. My dog's toenails, like everything
yeah,
has a
yeah,
degree of consciousness. And the only thing that's required for love to show up in this universe, to be loved, is existence. So let's mutually love each other into existence. Let's dream a beautiful, time for us here now, but especially for those that come before us. I'm shamanistic tendencies of mine. I'm dreaming a new future into being, like intending, trying to throw a line and catch something. It's the same, but going into the future, picking the best, brightest future and bringing it here,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Great point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow, wow. I'm trying to process all of what I just heard here. It's so much insights there. I think you talked about communicating with trees and I was just kind of reflecting on that and it seems as if regardless of the type of communication, we all have the ability to communicate with one another. And from my understanding, it can almost be an instant sort of transmission of communication. What's your experience like when it comes to communicating with non-human
Right,
beings?
absolutely. For me, I'll share, it's essential for me to be in my first dimensional I am presence. Okay, so you tune into that part of you that's the core of you, like the very first cell that created us as a little, zygote and embryo as we grew, that's still in our body. That's still here. Use that as the portal, right? Go in there, feel it, much like in the Akashic records. You're probably going to be bathing in love and light because, of course, you love yourself, right? On that soul level here, maybe, but on the soul level, you do. And then allow that to spread out to all the cells in your body. And that's working on developing the second dimension of Indra's net that connects us all. Okay. And so it's just sort of letting go, it's stepping back, falling into it, joining in with that beautiful like grid that connects all of us there, whether it's a tree, a person, a fluff on the carpet, it's all there. And there's points of consciousness where these lines interact, right? And it's along here that a lot of quantum healing at least starts, or doing intuitive readings for someone, right? It's one way that
Yeah,
helps support that. And so you just sort of do that, like animal communications that I do, not
yeah,
much, but I do it. And then you just sort of reach out to the tree, and you don't blast it, or you don't blast, pets with love. You just sort of reach out and then use telepathy. Hi, I'm here. Is now a good time for us to maybe drop into a conversation? And then be quiet, still, as you will be in your first dimension. I am consciousness, and see what comes. Any of these techniques, Stu, we set our intention out in the field, out in our expanded consciousness. So
yeah,
coming from the
yeah,
heart and like, oh, I want a new car. I don't know, maybe for some people it will work because that's their own unique special gifts, right? But generally speaking, we do that and just connect with it. And maybe not that tree, but the same species right next to it might be better.
yeah,
It's like when I teach people how to dowse with a pendulum, there could be 20 rose quartz pendulums hanging on a rack in a store, but there's going to be one that's really going to respond to you.
yeah. It's beautiful that you touched on this. One of my experiences kind of going through my own journey, um, I would I was taking a walk and fortunately where I was taking a walk was, you know, scenic and had, a good amount of trees and other natural life. And I was just reflecting to myself that, okay, we might call these trees as if they're all one, one entity, which at a certain level of reality they are. But if you basically look at each tree, they are
Do them
their
justice.
own being, and you hit on a great point where every being, including trees, have their own way of reacting and responding to information. And I think that's a very significant aspect that you touched on, is that every single being, is a unique individualization of consciousness and has their own, profound um, ways of existing. And it's I just find that fascinating.
Wow.
Wow. So there's some trees that you, I'm assuming, have a particular sort of connection with versus some other trees that you may have a slightly different sort of connection with.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
absolutely. I remember going to a beautiful garden once and opened up the Akashic records of different um one species of tree, but different specimens in the garden. And like with
See.
humans, ethics is highly important. You have to ask permission.
Yes.
You have to get consent. You never read anything or anyone without permission. Okay? Never, ever, ever.
Great point.
And people say, well, I asked their higher selves. Yeah, well, not prove it, but are you sure? Really? How do you know? Because again, all that
Yeah.
glitters is
Yeah.
not gold, right?
Yeah.
So ask the person and or the tree, right? And each of the different trees, I think there was four of them, had a distinct personality. One, for instance, was really sad. And I thought, oh, I've never felt a tree quite like that. Like it was grief and mourning. And it's like, why is that? So this is in the tree's Akashic records because everything has a record. Okay. And I, talked to it. And then I looked around and then I saw a plaque and it was planted as a memorial tree for someone who passed on by the surviving
Wow.
families. And I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I'm
Right.
curious.
Yeah, it took
Does
on
that make
that purpose in its life
okay?
to
Okay.
to
Wow.
be there
Wow.
as a focus for these families for going there and thanking and flowers whatever little rituals they had but also
Yeah.
helping
Yeah.
them process it.
I see. Wow. Wow. What a beautiful role to play.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. And that's
You
all part
know.
of animism, that everything has a soul or a consciousness. And sure, rocks, crystals, they're slower than plants, that are slower than humans, et cetera, et cetera. Right? But they're all
Yeah.
part of the beautiful symphony, of the beautiful tapestry that we all weave together on this beautiful planet that we get to call home, Gaia, Mother Earth, the mother that will never leave us. Every planet star has its own unique consciousness, every constellation, everything does. And from the tiniest little bit, right? To the largest, most expansive, grandest being, right? It's just, oh, it's awe-inspiring.
And it brings us into the world of astrology. It's how certain forces, these celestial objects, have or kind of emanate, have impacts on us in some way. And that is another entire topic of its own, which I
That's
would love to
yeah, but
to get in with you as well at some point.
sure, sure, of course. And maybe some of your listeners are already, doing remote viewing. And you can remote view places. You can remote view Saturn, right? I wouldn't currently remote view the moon. I did it once. I
Interesting.
will never do it again, and I will never tell anyone why. Just don't go there. Don't go there. Um, um, I wouldn't remote view any like man-made things or structures. I would keep it natural, especially if you're just starting, right? For instance, I
Interesting.
remember
Interesting.
going to England, Buckingham Palace, and you know, by the gates they have these tall statues made out of whatever they're carved out of, right? And I remember looking at them, Stu, and it was like, wow, there's consciousness in there. And I was wondering if somehow some human consciousness got trapped, like we talk about ceremonial magic, and they got trapped in
Yeah.
there. And there, it's somehow like a receiving station or sending station anymore. But I remember feeling really sorry for the being, so much compassion. That
Wow.
was
So is that being was not there by
no,
choice?
I don't think so. No, it was I do not think so. It was like a guard or a sentry, a transmitter. I remember another trip to England, looking at crop circles, and you know, we went into Stonehenge on the
Yeah.
summer solstice, lots of fun. But there's a place that does ghost tours, and I wanted to get some metal welding rods to do
Yeah.
dowsing, like on the crop circles, right? And we
Yeah.
went to this guy. Oh, he does ghost tours. Oh, great. We'll come. And his shop was used to be an old jail, like hundreds of years ago, massive blocks and huge iron doors. Like it was a little creepy, but whatever. And I walked in, and there was clearly a being that was stuck in that jail cell that's been there for who knows how long, hundreds of years. And I pointed it out to him. And I said, "Well, why don't you help, escort him on? Right? Like this is not healthy. He's a soul. He just doesn't have a body right now." And the man goes,
Right.
"No, I want him to stay." And I was wondering, okay. He goes, "Yeah, well, he's part of my walking ghost tour, and I bring people here." And that's exactly opposite of what you're offering people. We are kind of going a lot into the what not to do, but maybe some people don't even realize that these things do happen.
Yeah, and I think at this point, with so much fragmented information out there, I think it is very important for people to understand what not to do at this point, because this is so readily available. I mean, there are some videos that I just see the title of, and it's literally, these sorts of abilities where you're interacting with beings, you're calling these certain entities, and sometimes for your own, and sometimes these videos are made so that people can do this for their own pleasure, for their own recreation, but it is not recreation. You are playing with a life. It may not have a body, a physical body, but as you said, these are beings and they have their own roles to play in existence. And by essentially keeping them trapped, you are bringing forth some serious issues, not just potentially for yourself, but others who that being is supposed to be interacting with, and you're essentially stopping them from playing the role that they're supposed to be playing. Um, so wow,
Yeah.
no, I'm very glad that you touched on that, Teresa, and you know, um, just to pivot, because I think that alone is its own topic and its own dialogue, really, when it comes to entities and navigating your way around entities in a responsible manner. But I'm just curious, just to pivot a bit. We've seen just how impactful frequencies can be, to our internal states, and even to some physical aspects of our reality too. And I'm curious, when it comes to music, which is also used a lot of times to heal and for various purposes, um, first of all, what sort of music do you listen to, and why do you feel that is?
Oh, well, thank you for this. I have a strong preference to listening to kirtan, devotional chanting. I do a little myself, but I'm certainly no, Snatam Kaur or David Pramel, etc., or Girish, right? So I have a preference for chants that are in, Sanskrit or English, and they're kind of put to more upbeat modern music. So it
Interesting.
appeals to me that way. My favorite one is a CD I can no longer get, called Mantrika, by an artist who sadly passed over, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. Um, Anat Jesse. And it every time I put it on, I every part of me lights up. It's just something that I'm in resonance with. And that's the way people need to look at sound therapy or bathing in sound, right? It's like I could eat anything, but if someone's, allergic to strawberries, it's not going to do them any good to eat a strawberry just because I say so, right? And
Good way of putting it, absolutely.
yeah, the music is just so dynamic. And just recently, I've started to actually sort of see it in color, like the synesthesia, right?
Yeah,
But I think that's a
yeah.
bit of a city that is a distraction. You know that phrase, if you see Buddha in the road, kill him. For instance,
Okay.
oh, 30 years ago, maybe, 25, I started making aromas spontaneously, like from my hands. It's all floral. It was ended
Interesting.
up being like a honeysuckle smell. And it took me years to figure out, and other people to point it out. They said, no, it's coming from you. And I don't wear perfume or scented body products, right? And I thought, oh, that's
Yeah,
cool. I can make aromas, but kind of so what? Like, what's the point of it? They needed to help humanity. Maybe sharing that story would inspire other
yeah.
people. I have no idea. Um, but it just didn't.
And who knows, in a world that hopefully is going towards putting significance into the subtle aspects of reality, perhaps there's some sort of role that plays as well. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a beautiful, I feel, ability, regardless of what it might be used for. I mean, uh, communication with something at some point in the future. Yeah,
yeah.
that's very cool.
Well,
Wow.
well, what I did is I evolved it. So that was just that one flower coming to me and like, hey, you can do this.
Yeah,
Okay. So then I started to
yeah,
connect
yeah.
with um any plant, right? But also crystals and do transmissions. So for when I was using cards, they pull a card and it's smoky quartz. Well, I would find smoky quartz by according my hands and I would mix it with grace and heart light and make like a spiritual energetic tincture and send it to them for healing purposes. And, and they could always feel it. See, that had more significance. If I could do it more and if I got good at bilocating, then if there was someone, trapped somewhere, I could bilocate with fresh water, a charged cell phone, a blanket, medicine. You see, that has purpose. That lights me up. But just the fact
I'm trying to come up with ideas as to how you can use this. And just one of the things, that's literally what I've been doing the past few seconds. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on using this ability maybe shepherd bees in the right direction if needed? I'm just curious. Maybe they can already sense where they need to be,
oh,
but
like
I'm just
bees, like
Mhm. Yeah. Why?
like bees.
Yeah, with like a floral aroma. Um,
Oh,
just yeah,
geez, I'd probably
just
want
a
to get
thought that
them
came to
away
me.
from humans.
I, don't-
Find
I
the
don't
norm where
I don't
no human
blame you.
trace exists. Go there.
It's funny you mentioned that. I tell you, I almost feel like, regardless of how we want to downplay the intelligence of other beings on this planet, particularly animals, I almost feel like we have a reputation among some animals, and we might want to work on that.
Yeah. Oh, there was a movie recently, and it was people who went away on a weekend trip, and then all of a sudden,
Uh-huh.
everyone got bombed and everything. And there's all these deer running around the property. And for a while, I
Yeah.
didn't know why they would run up and just stare at them, not moving. And I couldn't figure out what the deer were doing in this movie. But I think what it is they were looking to the humans for help and to protect them because they knew what was coming because they can communicate really well with
Yeah,
other
yeah,
beings, of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
right? And I think we do have that responsibility to help them. But
yeah,
thank you for that. You planted a really good seed.
yeah, yeah. Because I'm like, that is such a cool just skill to have, and I would love to see that in action for something that you feel. would be worth it. I
Ah,
think that would be so cool.
there's a
Um,
stranded orca calf, like a baby orca whale, not too like up
uh,
a little more north where I live, but it's been stranded in a
yeah.
lagoon and it's fine, but it's got to go out to the ocean,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
they're not having much luck because apparently, this orca's a pretty smart little being. But if I could help it by finding out its favorite food, which is probably salmon bellies
Yeah,
only. They don't eat the rest of it,
yeah.
but anyways, and I can make a trail of
Hey, they've
essence like
orcas got
oh
good
oh
taste.
to
I love salmon.
salmon and just sort of and know where they want it to go. That might help it.
Yeah, that
Something like
you
that.
just come up with a way to use, yeah,
Mhm.
your abilities. That's so cool. That is
That's
so
cool.
cool. That is a wonderful idea, I think, and I think the world would probably want to see that in action too. That's uh, also great. I mean, intent, which again is, I would say, the most important aspect of using any of these abilities. That's so cool. I just wanted to add real quick, also. About these about animals and connecting with animals. One video I believe I saw on some social media platform a while back showed a gorilla, and it was a parent seeing a bunch of humans coming towards their area, their territory, for some sightseeing. I believe it was some sort of a tour in Africa, or something along those lines. And what I noticed was, and I'm not sure if this wasn't the emphasis of the video, but what I saw was the gorilla picking up its baby, or at least taking it by its hand, picking it up, and really taking it away from humans. And that's one way I've seen animals react to humans. And then there's a polar opposite as well, where I've actually seen recently on a video, on a vlog of a couple that actually visits a lot of places in East Asia. They were in, I want to say it was Bali, where there was a temple in which they actually have reverence for the divinity, in monkeys. I believe it's a particular type. I believe it's a baboon. I'm not exactly sure. But unlike the other story that I just told, in which the gorilla, out of fear, took their baby away from humans, they they receive the love and the reverence that the humans have sent their way, and they are very much at peace in the temple. They don't steal food if people come towards them, which often is the case with monkeys and baboons, because they're so well fed. And it is a very peaceful. I mean, I almost sensed like a loving environment between uh, these baboons and human beings, and it was beautiful to see that this is also another way.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes, yes. Around here we have a lot of animals that are just got too familiar with humans and doesn't always work out well, right? There's a lot that it does work out well. And I mean, we have such polite deer here in the city where I live. When they walk around
Very
downtownish,
beautiful, by the way.
they'll walk on the sidewalks and they'll wait at the stop signs at the corners and then they'll go when they can. And this is true. I've seen it, right? They're very polite, and this is not just anthropomorphizing them. This is their behavior because they do
Yeah,
learn
yeah.
from us. They're
Yeah,
very
yeah, and it's very important that we set an example as, the most, you can call it, capable in certain ways, physical being on this planet, uh, that we set the the environment for the most conducive atmosphere for everything to flourish and grow. And I just hope that, there is a point in time where we don't have to fear for these creatures who, like you said, look, a lot of times they're going to respond to the environment around them, and they're going to do it a lot more unconsciously than humans are. So it's best that, we look inwards as quickly as possible, so that our external reality reflects what we want in this world, and this universe. And um, I just wanted to kind of end on a certain note, just because we're coming up on time. There's so much more to discuss. We briefly touched on music. We briefly touched on resonance and frequency, which I would love to cover in more detail in the future, as well as entities and kind of how to responsibly deal with them, among many other things, which I would love to touch on again with you in the future. Um, Teresa, I can continue our dialogue all evening, but I think it's a good time to wrap up for today. I'd like to inform viewers and listeners that for more information on the lessons of healing that you offer, they can visit your website at www.teresaklan.com. You can also find Teresa on Facebook as Teresa Klan, or on Instagram as Happy Dolphin. Love the username, by the way. It's Dolphin with a zero in place of the O, by the way. She's also in an official directory for practitioners where you can find her information and how to get in touch with her directly. The links will all be included in the description below. Teresa, I just want to say you are a beautiful being, a true master, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, not only for coming on, but for being who you choose to be. And I wish you the absolute best on your journey, and it would be my honor to connect with you again for another dialogue, shining brightly with your insights. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone here showing up to be caretakers, earth keepers of our beautiful reality, our universe.